Welcome everyone to the MMA Vivisection for UFC on Fox 29, UFC Glendale, UFC Poirier versus Gaethje with me, Zane Simon, my co-host Connor Rebish. We are here from BloodyElbow.com to break down this week's fight card, which looks like a lot of fun. Honestly, I mean, I know it's 14 fights long and that's kind of hellish, but it's on Fox, which means that, they can't really run that much over their time slot. They're not that valuable to Fox. So
plus on Fox, it always starts earlier, and 6 of the fights in this card are on Fight Pass, which hopefully means that they can rush through those if needed. Although, that's not always the case for prelims.
Here, I'll use a small moment of our time before we jump into this. And like the prelims are scheduled to start at a Pacific time, my time, 12:30, and then the main card's supposed to start, or the prelims on Fox is supposed to start at 3. So you get 6 fights in 2.5 hours. Like,
it's not bad.
Yeah, like they are going to have to be keeping a solid pace through all that.
They better hope they get a finish in at least one of those fights.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, it should be. I'm totally fine with that. If the UFC wants to do a 14 fight card and they can cram it into a 12 fight card window, that is totally fine by me.
That's probably going to happen more in the future. It's how boxing cards are. Like you have a million, like not amateur, but like a million lower level local fighter type fights on every boxing card. They just don't even bother showing them on TV or mentioning them anymore. For the live audience and for the UFC, those fights are going to be for people who subscribe online. And that's cool. Just burn through them.
Fight Pass by that time is working better than it is fucking right now.
Yeah, that's
at least, especially for the last 24 hours, as I've been doing watching tape for this show, it has been a complete shit show of buffering and connection errors.
It's been on and off the last couple months. It's not been a great stretch.
It's been on and off the past couple months, but today, like, literally just, I was up late last night doing this, and I'm complaining about, like, I basically watched 20 seconds of footage, and then it just buffers to the point the video freezes, and 9 hours later, it's still doing that. Like, usually that's the kind of problem that lasts an hour or two, and I just have to be like, oh, fuck it, I'll just come back to it in a few hours, and it'll be better. This shit's ridiculous. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. It just means for the first few fights in this card, I'm just gonna go off my memory. I'm gonna Joe Rogan it.
Oh no, no, Zane, don't go that route.
Start talking about how disappointing Khabib Nurmagomedov is.
Let's not get started.
All right. Anyway, we're going to jump into the bottom of this card with the bantamweight bout. Luke Sanders, Patrick Williams. Connor, take me away.
I will take you away, Zane. I will take you away, and you'll have a great time. This is a solid fight. I think this actually makes a lot of sense for both of these guys. Luke Sanders now on a quite surprising 2-fight losing streak. Both wins sort of unexpected. Both losses sort of unexpected. There was the one to Yuri Alcantara where he was beating the absolute ass off Yuri Alcantara and then got knee barred in the second round. And there was the fight with, please remind me of his name, Andre Sukumtat. Who was also probably losing, but Sanders in that one more visibly tired himself out on the feet, and then Sukumtat turned it up and caught him. So that one felt like it made a little more sense. It's still, you'll have to tell me if this is still the case, but it still doesn't really explain to me how Luke Sanders is or was an underdog here to Patrick Williams, because he is, he's kind of been caught in his last 2 fights. There was felt like more of a solid explanation in the most recent one, but I think he's still a very capable, solid fighter with a lot to like about his game. And that is not the case for Patrick Williams. Patrick Williams is extremely athletic. He's very fast.
Very good wrestler.
Yes, he has his wrestling background. That's his base skill set. Everything else he does seems to be like improvised based on athletic ability. He's very strong. He's got great balance. He's really fast. All the things we usually use to determine athleticism. Patrick Williams has those things, but he doesn't have great decision making. Doesn't keep a super cool head, and because he relies so much on his athleticism, there are a lot of holes in his game, both technically and strategically. There's a very big chance here, especially if that last fight of Sanders does indicate some kind of durability issue. There's a definite chance that Williams will clock Sanders on the way in the first round of this fight, just as he did to Tom Duquesnoy. But unless he turns that into a knockout, this looks like a Luke Sanders win to me. I think Sanders, even though he'll probably struggle to take Williams down, will spend a lot of this fight tying him up against the cage and just keeping pressure on him with his southpaw striking. So I'm going with Sanders by decision.
Yeah, I will say to Williams' credit, he has improved a lot from where he was. You know, for a guy who got started late in his career or late in his life and is already 36 now, and has had to take a lot of time off with various injury problems.
Yeah,
when he came back from 2 years off from to fight Duquesnoy, he looked a lot more composed. But that's also a lot more composed than the guy who got murdered by Chris Beal.
Yeah.
He had a long hill to go to be a more composed fighter.
And for all of that, like, you can say his technique improved, but how much of it is still based on this feeling of strength and athletic ability at the start? Like, he wilted so fast when Duquesnoy started to hit him to the body.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of it, that's the biggest thing, honestly, is just, and this worries me a little with what you were saying about Luke Sanders fading against Andre Sukumta. Yeah. But the big thing to me would be that Patrick Williams fights in a way that suggests that he doesn't really understand, or he knows he could gas out and is just trying to finish a fight before he does.
Sure.
Or he doesn't understand and he's fighting what's his name? Sanchez, not
Dhiego Sanchez.
No, El Dirte, the middleweight.
Andrew Sanchez.
Andrew Sanchez, who seems to fight in a way that suggests he has no clue what his gas tank is like and is just bound to burn himself out fighting at a ridiculous pace. And Williams has some of that. Like, the way he approached that Duquesnoy fight, it's like, wow, this is really impressive, and there's no fucking way you can keep this up.
It's like a tactics versus strategy thing. He's learned the form, but not the control, you know?
Yeah. So unless he can break Sanders out of the gate, Sanders has traditionally had a very high gas tank, very good motor, very much a scramble, go anywhere, fight anywhere, strong in the clinch, will just pour on lots of volume, will scramble a lot. And so I got to pick him to maybe have a bad first round with Williams storming out of the gate, putting hands on him, trying to take him down, stuff like that. But then if this gets into the second and third, I expect Williams to fade and for Sanders to take over. So
as long as he does go to his wrestling, I think maybe that was why he got so tired against Sukumta. He was kind of just trying to kickbox with him.
Yeah.
And he is a wrestler. Like, that's part of the Sanders game, is to mix it up and keep the pressure on by any means necessary.
I mean, as we've talked about with Sukumta before, Sukumta is a fighter who generally just needs a lot of time to kind of figure out and time his opponents, and then he's got power and he's got decent hands and accuracy when he can get that time. So
he is bantamweight Jimmy Manuwa.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sanders is now a large favorite here. In fact, what I'm seeing shows he always was. He was never.
But I don't know what I was going off of. Maybe it's a different fight on this card where I was surprised. And
I think it must be a different fight on this card.
Well, it's good news to me.
Opened at -310, dropped down to -367, and only recently he got as low as -422, and then just jumped up to -380. So
fine by me.
You were a little high and looking at odds, and that's okay.
That actually feels a little too wide to me. Like, Williams is dangerous, you know?
Williams is dangerous, and we've seen Sanders now have problems twice now where he's been finished in fights he was winning.
And who knows where his head's at now that he's lost 2 in a row by finish, you know?
So we were all prepared to poo-poo the odds, and now it's like, oh, well, nah, maybe it's just too. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. But Williams opened at plus 230, jumped up to plus 288, and has climbed steadily. Is now at plus 320. So, yeah, that's getting a little wide considering that Sanders has been finished twice in a row now, and Williams, if nothing else, is athletic and dangerous and is going to put it on him early and test him early.
Yeah, he did have a big moment. Now I don't know, like that does seem a little crazy wide. I was expecting something in the 150.
Well, you were expecting range. Sanders to be a favorite, you goof.
I was hoping that he had reversed, but I was expecting something in the hundreds range.
Okay, gotcha.
Which would be okay, but we'll see.
That brings us to another bantamweight bout: Matthew Lopez versus Alejandro Perez, and this is an interesting fight. This is kind of a tough fight to predict in that, like, Lopez is clearly the better athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly and he has that kind of classic base MMA skill set we think of being like a good wrestler with a good back take game and some submission ability and things like that, and a willingness for wild offense.
Mm-hmm.
But Perez has kind of showed that, like, staying on your back foot, waiting to counter, and being just really defensively sound and not taking a lot of chances is winning him a lot of fights.
Mm-hmm.
And it's winning him kind of higher level fights than Lopez has been able to win. Like,
Alejandro Perez feels like the first guy to realize that the octagon doesn't have corners.
Yeah.
Like, we've had this age of the pressure fighter. Everyone's been pressuring. He's like, oh my God, I don't have to be pressured. It's so easy to run around.
Yeah. It's a dude who only fights the fight that Renato Moicano fought against Jeremy Stephens.
Yes.
That is his only fight.
Except not as good with the clean punching sometimes.
No, not as good with the clean punching, but he's only fighting lesser versions of Jeremy Stephens too.
Yeah.
So.
It's not great.
But I mean, it's more impressive to beat Yuri Alcantara than it is to beat Mitch Gagnon.
Sure.
And Perez has done it just by sticking very.
Beat Yuri Alcantara. I mean, that does have to be said. That was
a
very, very close and uneventful matchup.
Yeah. The basics come into it, though, that, there's a chance we did see Perez did lose to Williams a while ago.
Mm.
And Matthew Lopez does have consistent wrestling that he will go after aggressively. So there's a chance that Lopez will just get Perez down and hold him there and force him into a bad grappling mistake and submit him. But I just don't feel like Lopez's game just still feels disconnected and wild and really unstructured, and like he's just kind of throwing himself out there with the idea that all the parts are going to click sooner or later, but no real. I don't feel like I'm seeing you're clearly trying to become this kind of fighter. It's like, you're tightening up your boxing slowly, but now you have like 2 punches you can throw instead of just one.
Yeah.
And then you just have to rush in for takedowns, and if you can't get those, then you're in trouble. So I got to pick Perez there to stay upright and stay on the back foot, not make mistakes. If Lopez can swarm him and just overwhelm him, then great. That's to his credit. But Perez has been able to stop a lot of people from doing that. So,
yeah, man, I can see the logic in that. I mean, really, this is a very sensible matchup too. I think.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense because Perez has not been very exciting. If for whatever reason, like, you look at this guy, he's not been beaten in his past 5 fights. Doesn't really feel like that.
Well, because like I said, it's all about being on your back foot and being very safe. And it's that Renato Moicano, Jeremy Stephens thing. Like, that's a cool win, and we're all like, oh wow, that was an impressive win to get. But you never like, oh man, remember that exciting Renato Moicano?
And it doesn't really carry the same weight when you're doing it to Andre Sukumtat. I know he did just knock out Luke Sanders, but like when you're treating him the way that Renato Moicano it feels like Anonymous kind of has to treat Jeremy Stevens that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like Perez has to fight these guys this way. It's like, this is the most obvious choice. It's like, well, this is how I fight.
Yeah.
And every single one is going to be like a split majority draw type situation. Because a lot of these, they don't feel like wins in my memory, Zane. They really don't. I'm going to go with Matthew Lopez here. I really do think, like, your point about Perez's ability to dictate pace and to stuff takedowns, that definitely carries weight. But with his 66% takedown defense, I do notice that Perez is not, like, the last guy to take him down at all was Scott Jorgensen. But I was also like the last wrestler he faced.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that this isn't all just based on like, oh, Perez shuts down the takedown. It's mostly that I don't trust the way Lopez fights and approaches his game at all, like in any phase. Like he's a good aggressive wrestler, but it's always super chancy. Like he's always having to bull himself into a position to get a wrestling chain started.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a very good point. Like Perez moves so much. I don't know. I guess I'll keep it interesting early on. I'll stick with Lopez. I mean, that is a very fair point. I do think though, like, I haven't seen Perez defend an aggressive like wrestler's takedown game in 4 fights now. And the last time he did, he was taken down twice. And I also haven't seen him, like, the other thing with these guys he's fought, not a lot of them are actually that aggressive on the feet. The last one was Albert Morales, who that was the first fight of his in which he turned down his striking aggression and tried to have a more measured performance against Perez, and didn't just come out and brawl as he had largely before then. And that was, I think, because he fought Perez just after losing his first UFC fight to Thomas Almeida. So if Lopez comes out and is not shook by his own recent knockout to Rafael Sunsao, if he comes out and throws down, I think he might have an effect on Perez. But God knows what the judges will be looking at and how that early lead will actually play out, because Perez has managed to scrape by after losing a few first rounds. So we'll see.
I'm taking consistency here. That's my...
I respect it. I usually do that myself.
Perez is a mild underdog here, opened at -150, adjusted up and down to +108 or so, and is currently at +111. Those odds haven't moved at all after initial adjustment. Lopez opened at +110, adjusted up and down to -134, and is currently at -136.
Works for me.
That brings us to heavyweight bout, Arjan Bular versus Adam Wieczorek.
This one sucks. This is not, it's not going to be fun. I'm not excited at all. Both of these guys' last 2 fights, not fun. Not a good one to study tape for. Wiechorek's fight with Anthony Hamilton, one of the ugliest heavyweight fights I've ever seen in the UFC.
Well,
Definitely.
we remember our scouting idea, our picture of Wieczorek when he came in is, this is a dude who is not technical in any way and just kind of manages to outlast and then outwork his opponent as the fight goes on.
Truly, it was a performance of one guy winning just because he had cardio.
Yep.
Like, that does matter at heavyweight.
Not even like cardio, like he doesn't get fucking exhausted. He does. He just still fights really hard when he's exhausted.
He's just calm when he's tired as shit.
Yep.
That's the difference between him and the vast majority of MMA heavyweights.
Yep.
And that was almost the thing which upset Bular in his first UFC fight, because he was having a good bit of success. Not much of a pace, not a lot going on, but he was winning the early rounds against Luis Enrique. Enrique came out for the first time in his career having some round 3 cardio and decided to start throwing combos, and definitely won that round and had Bular in a sort of dire situation for a bit. So the question is, the very enticing question, Zane, is can Bular win this fight in the first round and a half? Or can Wieczorek lose that first round and a half not so badly that he can't then win the second part of the fight? And if both guys win exactly half of the fight, can we all please just call it a draw and move on to the next one? I guess Oh, I guess I'll take Bular for the wrestling, really, just because Vitorek ended up on his back immediately against Anthony Hamilton and does so frequently. As long as Bular, even if he just fights the way he did against Enrique and really measures his energy, Vitorek is not accurate or consistent with his output. He really just stays there. So I think Bular is good enough to win the early portions of this fight, but we'll see. And I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting mostly, like, with the Luis Enrique thing, is that Enrique, not only did he actually show third round cardio for the first time in his entire career, but he's also just infinitely more technical than Adam Vitorek.
Luis Enrique is a pretty good fighter.
He could take advantage of it in some way, and saying Luis Enrique is infinitely more technical than somebody should give you an idea of just how Adam Vitorek fights.
God. That Anthony Hamilton, that's a depressed us fight, man. That will be on the show someday.
Yeah, that will.
Ugh.
But that, all that being said, like I can't pick Vitorek because even if he has more cardio late, if he's facing somebody who's a much better and more willing wrestler, like I just don't trust him to have any of the technique to take advantage of that. Most of the dudes he was fighting on the European circuit were just terrible and fell apart so badly late in fights that it didn't matter that he was terrible. So, yeah. Arjan Bular, I'll take him. Odds on the fight. Bular opened at -150, adjusted down to -338, and is currently -377. Vitorek opened at +110, jumped up to +281, and is now +293. Those are too wide to my taste. Bular really hasn't proven too much yet, but Vitorek is, any reasonable UFC heavyweight should be able to beat him. Should, being the operative. And reasonable has no meaning outside the top 5. So
this fight, this is like staring into the heart of the shimmer at the end of Annihilation. It's just like I just can't even comprehend what I'm looking at, and I don't care. It's like if Annihilation was really boring.
The worst shimmer.
I went into it with my reason was I really want to be bored.
Yeah.
And so that's what I got.
All right. Welterweight out next. Speaking of shit fights, Dhiego Lima versus Yushin Okami.
Yeah, we did describe this as a pretty good card when we started. Now I'm starting to wonder why. We haven't gotten to the good stuff.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the good stuff yet.
But it's clear why what their metric was for what belongs on Fight Pass and what belongs on TV where people can see it.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is happening.
Yeah, but anyway,
sorry, I thought it was me, Zane. I thought you threw it over to me.
I didn't throw it over to you.
It's you. I was greedy.
But I don't really. I mean, are we picking Dhiego Lima to lose this fight?
I probably am. Not to spoil it for you.
This is kind of, this is like going into the Wang Guan versus Alex Caceres fight. I'm just like, am I picking Alex Caceres to lose this fight?
Yep.
Probably. Because Dhiego Lima can't wrestle and doesn't grapple well. He's a static grappler off of his back.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not a knockout artist. Like he did well to win fights on Tough Redemption, but he's got 3 knockouts in his entire career. The last one being a TKO over Roger Carroll in 2013.
He's exactly the kind of fighter who would do well on Tough because, especially against like older, more worn out kind of competition, he's just like. He's smart. He likes to do everything. And he's better than most fighters, I think, in a situation where he's buddy-buddy with his opponent because he's like a gym hero. Like, he's good in the gym. He goes to war in the gym. But in the fights, you never, ever see the best of Dhiego Lima. For whatever reason, he's one of those guys who just can't consistently turn it on when it really matters.
On a similar note, though, Yushin Okami looks really fucking fragile and old.
900 years old.
And he can be willing to wrestle, but he doesn't necessarily wrestle outright. Like, he'll just do a lot of clinching and a lot of throw my long jab and my body kick and try to win rounds throwing one strike every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, God. You know what?
How funny would it be if Dhiego Lima Anderson Silva to Yushin Okami just like picked him apart in a slow-paced boxing match and knocked him out?
I'm going to pick fucking Dhiego Lima.
No. Okay, all right.
For the fuck of it. I can't picture Yushin Okami with his like receding hairline and like his telephone pole jab that is now like telegraph pole jab.
Good, that was good.
Yeah. Thank you. And I don't know, he might wrestle Dhiego Lima through the canvas and choke him out, but I can't pick it. I just can't. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't this is essentially the last fight for me. Like it's very difficult for me to parse this one because Dhiego Lima has so many evident problems as a welterweight. And I really like Dhiego Lima. Like it's one of those cases that makes me kind of sad because whenever I hear him talk or watch him train or even watch him make improvements, I'm like, oh.
Or watch his brother.
or watch his brother. Yeah. There's a clear athleticism difference between those two, but I'm like, oh, maybe he's gonna turn that corner because I can tell like he's an intelligent fighter and he seems like a cool guy and he really just wants to be better at this. So maybe he's gonna turn that corner and get there. And it just never really seems to pan out. He always in his fights, he seems as a striker, he seems really, really picky. He's way too cautious of wasting punches. Probably has something to do with the fact that he's worried he'll get wasted when he does throw a punch because of the chin issues. And he can't wrestle, as you said. He somehow still has not really developed any effective takedown defense, and isn't really aggressive enough to make that work when he does wind up on his back. It's a game full of holes. It kind of happens to work sometimes, and it always feels kind of lucky when it does, or like it completely inexplicable. It has no connection to how you would predict his next fight because it's probably going to fall apart then. Yushin Okami, like, what the hell can you say? Like, he's had some credible wins in recent years. He looked absolutely awful on the short notice fight with OSP, but I don't know how much that says about him as a fighter at all.
Well, I mean, he also looked really awful in a split decision over Paul Bradley in 2016.
Sure. I mean, I'm not saying it's his only flat performance. But I don't quite know if it's if it's predictive of every performance he's going to have from here on out. Like Yushin Okami could win this fight so easily.
I know.
He just has to take Dhiego Lima down. You know what I mean? Like he just has to do that and then do whatever he can from top position. Even if it's nothing, he could probably win the fight by just controlling top position and hitting takedowns. But I have no idea if he'll do that. He may just slowly stalk after Dhiego Lima, not throwing, looking like a Jacare who doesn't have Jacare's power to back him up. And if he does that, like Dhiego Lima should win that kind of fight. I don't know. I'm going to pick Yushin Okami because
why the fuck would you pick Dhiego Lima?
How am I picking Dhiego Lima up at middleweight? You know, like,
or is this a welterweight? This is a welterweight bout.
Oh, Yushin Okami's making welterweight?
Yeah.
It gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
Well, do I want to pick Yushin Okami at welterweight?
Right?
Oh, this fight sucks. I hate this card now. I can't wait for the main event. Okay. I'll pick. God, he's going to look terrible. He's been at light heavyweight before. He's not that small of a middleweight, is he?
I mean, he's been at welterweight for a while now. Basically, ever since he left the UFC.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Down at welterweight.
Okay, he's been doing it. Okay, I'm sticking with Yushin then.
But I mean,
get past
it. You know, a loss to John. He went to welterweight for the John Fitch fight, which he lost, and then he beat Rita Sakurai in deep, who's 46. And Shingo Suzuki in Pancrase, and a split decision fight over Paul Bradley that he spent most of on his back and getting dropped. So that split decisions.
God, but can Dhiego Lima do any of that?
No, I don't. Okay.
This fight sucks so much.
Odds are basically dead even. Yushin Okami opened at -120, adjusted up and down to -116, is currently at -111. Dhiego Lima opened at -120, adjusted up and down to -103, and is currently at -113. So, yeah, it's a terrible fight.
Fine.
if anything happens, we will all be happier for it.
Yeah, I'm almost excited at this point. I kind of have to see this. It's a pointless shit show viewing.
Brings us to a women's flyweight bout: Shana Dobson versus Lauren Mueller. And this is you.
Yet another not particularly intriguing matchup here. They really like, the more I look at this, I'm like, okay, they threw all the shit they had on Fight Pass.
Yeah.
The first two are I think okay, interesting fights. But Dobson won her UFC debut in reasonably impressive fashion. She showed some power at the very least. A fight with Ariel Beck, I believe. Both women,
the woman who's too tough to be broken or stopped.
Yeah, that's not a good look. I know, because she came back from having her leg broken or something, and then.
Well, she was all like, farm strong, like you can't break. I'm a tough farm girl. You can't.
And then she got swiped across the. I mean, I don't blame her. It just looks.
I don't blame her either. It was just like.
I think she got her nose torn off her face with a right hook, and then she got clocked on the chin while her eyes were completely filled with water from getting her nose broken, and then she stumbled and fell down.
Yeah, there's no hate to her, but it's like the Eddie Alvarez being like, "Oh, I'll be ready for Khabib," if something happens to Khabib or Tony, and then it's like, I'm 190, I can't help it.
Yeah. It's not a good look considering the pre-fight buildup.
Yeah.
A fairly competitive fight it was. Both women landed a boatload of inside leg kicks. That's one thing I remember about it. But it was definitely Beck picking up the pace and starting to score more as the bout went on. Dobson was like getting closer, but she had a lot of trouble getting her punches in the first round. In the second round, by increasing the effort and trying to get her punches in, seemed to slow herself down and start eating some more shots from Beck. I don't know how great of a look that is. But she's fighting somebody here who is likewise extremely inexperienced. If you look at, like, Dobson's record has not a lot on it, but there are at least, like, there's Roxanne Modafferi on there in an exhibition bout. There are women who have, there's Ariel Beck, I guess. There are women who have experience in fights. And largely for Lauren Mueller, it's been debutantes. It has been.
She's a Gladiator Challenge vet. She's been can crushing.
Yeah, and say what you will, she had to scrap in her Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series fight, and you wouldn't always expect somebody who has feasted on a diet of Gladiator Challenge opponents to be able to scrap, but she could throw down.
Yeah.
And I guess the ability to just do that consistently for 3 rounds, like, that might be enough, because Shana Dobson just doesn't really do a lot. Her game really reminds me of like Tyron Woodley's, except I think she has a far more faith. Tyron Woodley deserves to have as much faith in his power as he does. I don't know that Shana Dobson does. She's definitely got power for this division. She hits hard, but she could use more volume. She could use more feinting. She could use more activity, and she kind of pretends to do all these things instead of doing what Tyron does and just standing against the cage, but it doesn't really work. Like, it's all just kind of fluff until she manages to land a big sweeping right hand. And I don't know. I generally, in lower divisions like this, especially women's divisions, I don't generally bank on like, at some point she's going to knock her out. So it's probably just going to be 3 rounds of scrapping. And I kind of think that Lauren Mueller can have the edge in that kind of fight.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing I took away from Miller's fight with Miguel Velasco is that she is really, because she's been can crushing, and just because, the style she's built for however she's training, she has a ton of faith in her pressure. and in her ability to just be aggressive and not get hurt. Now, maybe like Beck, that'll just walk her right into something hard and she'll get hurt and crumble. But in the meantime, she's going to probably be winning rounds. She's going to be pushing a pace. And I really liked how honestly, in that fight, I loved how she mixed up her attacks and combinations. Like, she was going to the body, going to the head, throwing knees inside. Mm-hmm. And more than that, too, what I liked actually is that she didn't really have any interest in... She's interested in being a stand-up clinch and pocket fighter. So she pushes a pace, but she doesn't push a pace of like, oh, now I'm going to hold on to you and I'm going to try to drag you to the mat. And then I'm going to try to work a top game. Like, she would push herself into her opponent, into Velasco. And then as Velasco would try to like drop down or, get hurt or something like that, she'd push her back up to the cage so she could keep throwing and keep attacking in the pocket and keep working her clinch game. And I actually like that a lot. Like, that to me suggests somebody who's not going to throw themselves out of a functional game plan. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, good point.
I think Dobson will have to hurt her badly. And if she can't do that, she's going to lose the fight. So yeah, I agree. I'm going to pick Mueller. I actually like that fight because I'm interested to see if Mueller can go from can crusher to being an actual, like, legit next wave of talent,
It already has the makings. Like, at the very least, it's two women who do not mind stepping into the pocket to hit the opponent. Like, it has the makings of an entertaining, scrappy kind of fight.
I expect it'll be a fun fight because I think Mueller will push a pace, and then Dobson is going to be forced to respond to that.
Yeah. It's a step up. It's a step up from Bular Vichereg for sure.
Yeah. Mueller opened at -190, adjusted up to -102, is currently at -112. Dobson opened up at +150, adjusted down to -120, and is currently at -112. So those odds are dead even.
Just fine. I mean, Mueller's the slight. Oh wait, was Dobson also -120?
So Mueller opened at -190, is currently -112. Dobson opened at +150, is currently -112. So they're dead even.
Okay.
I think Mueller deserves to be a very slight favorite, just stylistically, but neither woman has proven it nearly enough to have any kind of real edge.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about a fight between two women with 4 previous fights. So
yeah, and before Dobson beat Beck, she'd never her most experienced opponent in a pro bout was 1-1. Mm-hmm. So there's no.
Yeah, don't fret about the odds too much.
Yeah. That brings us to a welterweight bout: Gilbert Burns, Dan Moret. And I don't mind what I see out of Moret as a fighter. Like, looking at his style regionally, he seems like he's very willing to push aggressively after an opponent and really likes to be a back take specialist or try to dip in for a hard takedown if he can get it, and then work to take the back and then work chokes from there. And it's very much like, it's a very clear progression of all I'm trying to do is pressure you to get a takedown or to get a grappling advantage on you. And that just doesn't feel like a game plan that's going to work against Gilbert Burns. I mean, we know Burns' grappling we know his wrestling and grappling aren't connected to his striking. He's got kind of that Jordan Johnson or King Mo thing of being like a back foot striker, where it's like, how are you gonna wrestle off your back foot? You don't have any drive to set up a shot. You don't have any connection to getting a takedown. But if Moret's going to do that work for him, which seems really likely, then Burns is an incredibly good grappler on the ground in any position, whether off his back or on top. Mm-hmm. And Burns can be overwhelmed by consistent hard striking offense. He leans back and doesn't really have good defense as he's trying to get away from shots. but I don't see enough consistency from Moret. His pressure is mostly just quick swarming pressure to get in on a takedown, and if he's out in space, it tends to just be single shots, and Moret's been knocked out a few times in ways that would make me not trust him if Burns takes the initiative and does the pressuring first. So I got to take Burns here just consistently. I think this is a good matchup for him.
Yeah, on the Burns pressuring note, we did finally see a bit of that, a step around that corner at the very least in that fight with Jason Sago. There was like a feel difference where the back foot thing that you mentioned went away just a touch.
Yeah,
Burns was before, like, I always thought of and described Burns as a fighter who was like a focus met hero, like looked amazing on the pads, because you could see in his fights he had good form. He knew how the strikes were supposed to look. He knew how the combinations were supposed to go together. And he knew, like, after you block with what hand, what are you supposed to return with, and how do you move after that? The textbook pieces were largely there. And that's not surprising, a Henry Hoof trained kickboxer. But like under pressure, under duress, things would fall apart. And it became clear that even in fights like Burns was being required to be scrappy in a lot of those fights because he didn't have a sense for the range with his opponent. He didn't have an idea of how to dictate the pace of the fight. It was almost like he was so stiff because of his technical ability. He hadn't yet like broken in his game.
Yeah, that's very much the Hoof thing we've talked about too, where it's just a lot of like, you guys are learning all the fundamentals. Somebody's like, Hoof has torn you down, is teaching you basic fundamentals, and you're doing some good, strong, technical, singular things.
Yeah.
But you really do strike like a novice. It feels like you are learning all of this.
It was, I guess, feel is the good word. Like, it was like Burns didn't have a feel for the striking exchanges. It didn't come naturally. He was still like thinking hard about how everything was supposed to look. And against Sago, like he finally got to the point as a striker where he could turn off the need to be skillful and clean all the time, and sometimes just close the gap and hit the dude.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't the greatest performance ever, but Sago is a pretty underrated fighter. I think he's really awkward, very difficult to fight, and despite like not being a great wrestler, you do have to worry about a lot of different tactics from him when he's a guy who's going to keep you sharp and make you work the whole time. And Burns did that and beat him convincingly and dropped him and put him out in the third round to put an exclamation point on it. So I don't know yet if Burns has fully turned that corner, but it feels like he started to. It feels like he specifically addressed the one thing that's been holding him back in his most recent fight. And otherwise, I agree with everything you said. We'll see if he can make that work against Moritz. The context is going to be a little different because I think Moritz is going to get in his face a little more than Sago did, not trying to operate quite so much at kicking range, but it also means he's probably going to be giving Burns the kind of fight he wants, tying up with him, engaging with him on the ground. And otherwise we'll get to see if Burns has also managed to refurbish his striking under pressure. If when he has somebody coming after him with punch combinations, if he can still respond loosely.
Like I just see this could very easily being like a slightly more athletic version of the Sayevsky fight. You know, where Sayevsky was just like very willing to go after him and tangle up and try and like grapple with him and all that, and just got totally worked for his trouble.
Poor Łukasz Sayevsky. I thought he had a few better UFC performances in him, but he didn't get the chance to show them.
And he's not athletic at all, which
I know that.
Is a problem.
You don't have to be, Zane, okay? You don't have to be athletic.
I know you love those underdog, terrible athletes who just like to get in there and crap. All right. Burns is a prohibitive favorite in this fight, opening at -475, dropping down to -498, and continued sliding down to he's all the way out to -611 now. And Moret opened at +325, adjusted up and down, up to +389, is continued rising to +431. Burns should win this fight. It's a good fight for him, but
what's the explanation for that?
Yeah, I don't like. Moret isn't bad. He's a good lockdown grappling back take specialist who aggressively pushes for that game, and Burns has been just bullied by strong pressuring fighters before. So
yeah, I just don't know why you'd have that much faith in Burns as a fighter. Like, he's really had his first, new leaf kind of fight. So
yeah.
I don't know. Is how short notice is this? Was Moret like
that is the other thing, is that this is on like 2 weeks. Well, this is.
They've had a little time, right? Because it's not like Olivier Aubin-Mercier didn't get injured, really. He got pulled like 3 or 4 weeks out.
It was, so the Aubin-Mercier fight got pulled, and they were going to rebook Venata, and they announced that like a month ago. And then they announced that like a month and a half ago, like right after, next day after Burns was off that card.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, "Oh, Venata's not injured," and Venata's injured. That fight's not happening. That was like a month ago, and so Moret is probably. I think he's had at least 2 or 3 weeks. So
yeah, it's a little time. That might explain it somewhat, but still not really.
Yeah, not really. All right, that brings us to the main card, and Krzysztof, or the. Not main card, the prelim opener on Fox, the Fox prelim opener. There we go. And Krzysztof, Jotko, Brad Tavares, a middleweight bout, and Connor, middleweight to your bag. So take it away.
I'm quite into this fight. I like both of these guys, even though both of them have put on their fair share of truly dull performances. Jotko, most notably, very recently, with the performance against. Oh my God, it's just me and names. No, I was thinking of the David Branch one. That's the one.
Oh, the David Branch fight, yeah.
Yeah, against Uriah Hall, Jotko looked pretty good, and then it turned out he had looked too good and got a little tired, and then Hall knocked him out.
Yeah.
Against David Branch,
he just got bullied.
Yeah, it was like literally exactly the opposite kind of fight.
Yeah.
He just wasn't pulling the trigger and going out there and making the fight happen. But on a good day, there's a lot to like about the game of Krzysztof Jotko. He's a technical striker who is not afraid to be untechnical. He's not afraid to slug it out, throw a few bombs now and then. He has, I think, underrated power. He's hurt a few guys in recent fights. Just doesn't tend to throw a lot or really push his advantage when he does tag people, but he does shake people up when he catches them. He's quite a good wrestler. That is like the ace up his sleeve against a lot of opponents, is he's got a pretty wide variety of takedowns that he can hit and chain them together.
Like really tricky dynamic takedown entry.
Yeah. Like these open space, kind of the way you would take somebody down, much in the way you would counterpunch somebody. Like you hit this sudden trip as they're coming after you. He hit a beautiful trip like that against Coal Pit Muay Thai. Scott Askham. Good Lord. He had a beautiful one of those against Scott Askham. He has a few other times in the UFC. And he's got vicious ground and pound, as we really found out in the fight with Thales Leites, where he just brutalized him on the ground and also showed some impressive ground skills. Granted, being in top position, but still being able to hang out on the ground with Thales Leites for a full round without difficulty. But Brad Tavares has had like the more refreshing recent performance than Jotko. Tavares' fight with Thales Leites, I mean, granted, Jotko beat him first.
Yeah,
but
and dominated him, but yeah.
But Tavares, like that was his most recent fight, and he really lit Thales Leites up. He was yet another guy to give Thales Leites Anderson Silva flashbacks, where mid-fight he was like, "Oh God, the jab keeps landing, the leg kicks keep landing, it's happening again," and then he lost. Yeah. So it's really a question of like Jotko's sometimes aimless but tricky southpaw style against the very much not aimless, but maybe not always as urgent as it needs to be.
Kickboxing, never as urgent as it needs to be.
Yeah, I liked it in the Thales Leites fight. I think that was like.
But I mean, I think at this point with Thales Leites too, like we've at the Tim Boetsch Renaissance notwithstanding, we've kind of seen Leites increasingly getting to a point where it's like either he has to be able to bully you physically, or he just gets stuck in this kickboxing match that he's still not that prepared for. Like, he's a better boxer than he used to be, but
he's a bruiser. He's not, he gets picked apart by technical fighters. Yeah. You know, I for whatever reason though, like Tavares just has this really stable feeling about his game. Like, he's very difficult to take down. He's super consistent. He just stays in his jab. He stays in his kicks. I don't know. Like, I just haven't seen. I really like
Alejandro Perez at middleweight.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. Not quite so defensive either. Like, I think he's a little cooler in the pocket and more willing to stand his ground. It's just like at middleweight, everyone's slow, so not much ever happens.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's something about Jotko lately where he just doesn't. I think he feels pressure. He feels like he's got to perform, and I think Tavares is better under those kinds of circumstances. Like, you put the pressure on Tavares, like, okay, you really need to show up now. This is your turn things around fight, and he comes in like he did against Litis and really performs. Whereas like Jotko, the pressure's on against Uriah Hall. He's expected to beat him, and he does great, and then just through his own doing falls apart.
He did like rewatching it though. He did just about literally kill the man.
Oh, sure.
Hall looked so far gone that the idea that Hall could come back, you like watch 2 minutes of that fight, and then you tell somebody, "Oh, Hall wins," you'd be like, "What the fuck? Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, no doubt. But then you have that like pitted against the Branch fight. It's like which Jotko are you going to get? Like where's the middle ground between those two extremes? Where is he going to fight Tavares and just completely shut down because he's in there against another long range boxer type? Or is he going to try to go to war with him? And I don't know. Like, how's he going to approach it? I don't know. It just feels like Tavares is a safer pick. Maybe I can't explain it very well, but what do you have to say, Zane?
I'm going with Jotko, and I'm going with Jotko mostly just because Tavares, even at his best, it's always like, I'm slowing you down to my pace, and the fights, the Tavares fight, or the latest fight, notwithstanding, maybe most of Tavares' wins are still kind of questionable unless the dude is just totally washed. The
Alejandro Perez of middleweight.
And like the Kyle Magalesh fight was a split. Elias Theodorou will claim up and down that he won that fight against Brad Tavares. And, otherwise beating Talis Laitis and Nate Marquardt. It's impressive, but I just kind of feel like if Jotko, even if he can't hurt Tavares badly enough it may be that he can't hurt him badly enough to empty his gas tank and fuck himself over. But if he's just going to go after Tavares with a bit more technique than Theodorou has and just pressure him a bunch and stay on him and wrestle him and trap him up against the cage and, just throw lots of strikes at him, wing shots from outside, kind of feel like he'll just work a little harder every round.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe not, but
the one thing that does give me pause, like the one technical detail I have is that Jotko, being a southpaw in MMA, is definitely used to people not throwing their jabs at him.
Mm-hmm.
And Tavares is not shy about jabbing, even when he's fighting a lefty. Is that going to be the key to slowing Jotko down to his pace? I don't know, but
it is also worth noting that Tavares, while he's really difficult to wrestle and grapple, has been knocked out twice.
Sure.
So if Jotko is just willing to stay after him and throw big shots at him and keep a pace on him that Tavares has to stay on and try and meet, I kind of think that Tavares is going to, I don't know that he's capable of actually upping his pace or doing so in a way that keeps him safe.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Jotko can control just enough of the action and can control just enough of the pace and pressure often enough to beat Brad Tavares.
Sure.
I remember thinking after the Bubba McDaniel fight it was after the Lorenz Larkin fight. I remember thinking Tavares has turned a corner and he's finally being more consistent with how he pressures people and taking over better. And then, every fight since then has kind of felt like, nope, he's still the same slow-paced kickboxer who, if you can't beat him technically standing, he will outpoint you round to round. But if you can force a fight on him, if you can make that fight difficult standing at all, then
yeah, that's fair. I guess he is kind of the guy he is, and it's really just matchup dependent how dominant he looks. Yeah.
So it'll be on Jotko to throw his wilder, harder hooks and body kicks and just kind of stay on that every round.
Jotko's not a bad athlete. He does have okay power, as I mentioned. Like, he could absolutely come out and Robert Whittaker Brad Tavares if he really wanted to. But I just don't know if he will.
I think the biggest thing with him that we saw him run up against with Dave Branch is honestly that he's just not that strong.
Yeah.
Baseline, like, and not, for punching power, but body strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's a good technical wrestler, and he can even technically dominate some people and stuff like that. But then he had to hook up with Branch in the clinch and stuff like that. And it was just like, you can't turn this guy. You can't make this better grappler and wrestler respect you.
Yeah, but the bigger problem is that he kept clinching with him.
Yeah.
It's like, stop. You're not winning this. Just stop. Just fight differently. And I don't know, like, the thing is like, even though you would never pick it, that right there makes you think like Krzysztof Jotko would lose to Tim Boetsch.
He might.
That's why I love middleweight.
Yeah, but it also is kind of why I think he'll beat Tavares, is if he just like can stay on him and just like push him and keep a pace going. That might just be enough to take it, because like even if Theodore didn't win that fight, it was a close fight, and it was like somebody who fights technically in a much worse but similar way than Krzysztof Jotko.
Yeah, that's fair.
Tavares
lets them be slow fights, and he also I think he's fairly strong, but his attitude is very defensive in the clinch.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't mind being pushed up against the cage for a bit and held there, and he'll work his way out, but he's definitely not going to bully somebody inside. So if Jotko wants to push that range, he will probably be able to do it, as long as he can get past that jab.
Yeah. Tavares is currently the favorite, opened at -190, adjusted up to -130, and is currently at -139. Jotko opened at +165, adjusted down to +113, is currently at +114. So I guess I'm not surprised, considering Tavares is coming off a big win streak and Jotko's coming off a knockout loss. But
yeah,
otherwise, I think it's a really close fight, and I wouldn't really steer it heavily one way or the other.
Agreed.
That brings us to a flyweight bout: Wilson Reis versus John Moraga. And I came across the weirdest stat in the whole world yesterday.
Tell me.
Researching this. John Moraga, older than Wilson Reis. Would you ever guess that?
That's the weirdest stat in the world.
It is. The fuck? I'm older than Wilson Reis. Me?
Why do you feel like Wilson Reis is that old? Is he so experienced?
No, because if you looked at the man,
it's just a physical thing, especially with the mustache.
A Dominican baseball player.
Yeah, especially with the mustache. He does look like a Dominican baseball player. Well, then that's your solution right there. He's not. He's the oldest fighter on the roster. He's just lying about his
55, and he's just lying about his age. Oh no, I'm 32.
Yeah, it does. I mean, really, he might want to come out as a 55-year-old, because it does color his performance against Demetrius Johnson in a pretty positive light.
Yeah, absolutely. One way or another, I'm picking Wilson Reis here, and the biggest reason I'm doing it is, I don't buy John Moraga, knockout artist, off the second knockout of his career against, or third, I guess he had one in 2009, but the third knockout of his career against Magomed Babulatov, where he landed basically one perfect shot to end that fight. And otherwise, Moraga, to win, he either has to be an extreme grapple opportunist, where he finds that perfect submission when you're getting wild, and maybe he can clip you a little and lead you into it, or he has to be able to do everything. Like, even against Ashkan Mokhtarian, who is the lowest end of the flyweight roster, he was jumping on submissions and stuff like that and wasn't getting them. After that, he really had to do all parts of MMA. Like you get to, when you see a fighter fight a fighter that's much worse than them, I always like that because you get to see what they want, what they've been trained to do, what they think they can do, and what they think their game should look like. And when you see what Moraga's game should look like, it's, you know, he'll stay outside and throw the occasional like big punch or combination. And then he wants to get in and wrestle and have top control. And, you know, if you shoot in on him, he'll jump for submissions. And otherwise, if he can get you down, like he's not, you know, his ideal is to stop his opponent's progress with a takedown game and top game. And if Moraga is not going to be consistently content to just hang and box and really put combinations on Wilson Reis, is he going to grapple with Wilson Reis? I mean, you know, Wilson Reis is an excellent, excellent grappler. And his wrestling game has trouble when, you know, before he can get his boxing game going. But we've seen enough of John Moraga sort of inconsistent or disconnected boxing performances that I don't feel like Moraga can just stop Wilson Reis's boxing cold. And if he can't do that, and his predilection of pulling guard and jumping on guillotines when opponents shoot in, it's like, you know, I'm not trusting you to choke out Wilson Reis on a whim because he tried to take it to the ground. If at that point you're giving up takedowns, I think you're basically giving Wilson Reis exactly the fight he needs. And what we saw out of Reis against Henry Cejudo is a fighter who, Molly, his chin is not, like, he's not, you know, there's a specific, shouldn't even say, his chin isn't gone. Like, he took a lot of shots from Cejudo before he got knocked out in the fight.
And he's always been like a flash knockout guy.
Yeah. And otherwise, his game isn't, like, there's just a certain level of elite competition that Wilson Reis's game doesn't work for. Like, you can't be a kind of guy who's like, oh, if I face a good experienced striker at flyweight who won't get stuck by my my boxing, then my whole rest of my game is gonna fall apart. Like, that doesn't cut it with like Henry Cejudo or Demetrius Johnson. That's like, okay, I'll just fuck you over for as many rounds as it takes standing up. That's fine.
Yeah.
But John Moraga's not that dude, and I don't think he's about to become that dude. So I got to take Wilson Reis.
Yeah, it is hard to disagree. You know, I really like John Moraga. I'm glad that they got him a win over Ashkan Mokhtarian in you know, when he was just losing to top flight competition. Now he's back in his role. This is what they do with a guy like John Moraga. Frankly, I don't know if this is the best use of him as a fighter, because like where are they trying to build Wilson Reis to? Like, you don't use your gatekeepers as like stay busy fights for your contenders unless you are intending them to stay contenders. And Wilson
I think it was just one of the only top 10 flyweight fights that hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, well, because they have like 9 guys on the roster, so
yeah,
they have to count one of them twice to make a full top 10 ranking in the first place. And yeah, you know, Moraga's been a super inconsistent guy throughout his career, where he has had some really remarkable performances. Like, I know it was a very small sample size, but he did look good in that most recent fight. He looked like he had an idea. He was putting on pressure and counterpunching, looking sharp. And I always call back to his fight with Ulysses Gomez whenever I talk about John Moraga, because it was like the first time I saw him. And his boxing looked really good in that fight. Combination boxing in the pocket, head moving with his shots, small angles, solid stability in his stance. Like, everything looked really nice. And then other times he's just like the Chris Carriazo fight. He's just like winging kicks and looks completely clueless. And then other times, like, yeah, against Ashkan Mokhtarian, we see him grappling the hell out of somebody. Like, that's apparently what he really wants to do when he gets the chance, is to just scramble all over somebody on the ground. I think this is why he's been such a good opportunist throughout his career, is that he can do a lot of different things and fight a lot of different styles of fights. None of them with any great consistency, but in moments, he can do a lot of stuff. And he knows a lot of skills. But Wilson Hayes has a very specific, controlled way of fighting. He's going to come out. He's going to try to put a little bit of pressure on Moraga without having to push forward too much. Even if it means dancing around the outside, he's going to feint him. He's going to show him things. He's going to get him reacting. Moraga likes to watch, likes to counter. He's going to start reacting, and then Hayes' boxing is going to get going. Once his boxing gets going, his takedowns are going to get going, and then vice versa. Basically, with Wilson Hayes, with Moraga, it's any part of his game could work at any moment individually. But for Wilson Hayes, the whole thing is working or it's not.
Yep.
And but once he gets working, once the takedowns start happening, everything comes together really nicely, and you see why he has been such a highly touted fighter for so long. So yeah, I think Wilson Hayes is essentially, once he starts getting Moraga to react to him, is going to be able to take control of this fight, and it's going to have to take a truly special John Moraga opportunity to turn it around.
Yeah. Odds on this. Wilson Hayes is the favorite, opening at -170, adjusting up to -135, and currently at -138. Moraga opening at +145, adjusting up and down to +120, and currently at +112, having just dropped a little bit in the last couple of hours here. But I think Hayes could be a little wider here. I like this matchup for him, but otherwise, both guys are very, they're the 5 through 10 flyweights, and they can interchangeably beat any of the other 5 through 10 flyweights on any given day.
Yeah.
So
it's weird how you go down in division and things just keep getting spicier and more interesting. And it's man, 155 through 135. It's just everything's amazing. And every fight's incredible to watch. And you have so many different styles, and you get to 125 and it's you're back at middleweight. It's not even a bad division, really. It's but there's so few fighters, it all feels so pointless. It's I've seen every single matchup between these fighters possible. It's middleweight.
Well, there's that. And I also honestly think that, I kind of compare more middleweight is, I would compare it a little more to bantamweight in that it's just the weird body type midpoint that doesn't make any sense. Where what does a bantamweight fighter look like? No idea. What does a middleweight fighter look like? No idea. And then flyweight is going out the other end of light heavyweight is all of your big athletic freaks, and flyweight is all of your tiny athletic freaks. And you can't be a flyweight unless you are this small and this fast.
But a bantamweight, you could be Luke Sanders or you could be Tom Duquesnoy.
Exactly.
What's the common physical appearance between those two guys? I have no idea.
Yeah. But it does make flyweight then a little bit like light heavyweight, where you're just they're the 5 freaks at the top, and then there's just a bunch of kind of guys trying to cut it in a division that is not going to be kind to them.
Yeah.
That brings us to a welterweight bout: Muslim Salikhov, Ricky Rainey. Oh yeah, that's you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Did you have something to say? Because I'm a little perplexed by this one.
I was just gonna say I don't really know why the UFC signed Ricky Rainey unless the African American Stephen Thompson thing was just too hard to resist.
I guess. Are they thinking of Salikhov as their potential Michael Page because all of his crazy kick knockouts, and so now they're going to be well, our Michael Page will beat the guy their Michael Page beat.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that it? I don't know. This is a weird fight. Salikhov, I don't really understand Salikhov's game. How it all fits together, what kind of opponent he needs to make it work. He's I did not expect him to lose so definitively to Alex Garcia. Even though I knew that was a close fight, and I didn't think Salikhov was the greatest prospect in the world. It did feel in that fight he was just sort of drifting. And Garcia is normally a guy that he's the one drifting. But Garcia knew exactly what he needed to do to beat Salikhov in that fight. And Salikhov was in the opposite position. And then, like Ricky Rainey, African-American Stephen Thompson, I guess. It doesn't really it's not really how his style works. He's much more willing to get wild and messy.
Yeah, he just trains with Wonder Boy a lot, and apparently they were talking about it on Bellator broadcast. I was watching when I was watching tape on him, I was like, oh, okay, I can see it. I can see how he's broadly positioning himself and throwing specific techniques. It's okay, I get how somebody who trains that with Wonder Boy a lot might fight like this.
Yeah, just in a very different stylistic context. There's different things he wants to do with that position and with those moves. I don't know. I think is Salikhov a good enough wrestler to because Salikhov has a capable ground game, but is he a good enough wrestler to force that in a guy like Rainey? Maybe. But is Rainey going to be ready for all the spinning shit? He spars Stephen Thompson. Is he going to be fine with it? Is he going to be shook? Is he going to have an answer? I don't know. Tell me what you think, Zane. There's too many unknowns in this. I just feel compelled to pick Salikhov.
I'm picking Salikhov just because Rainey, to me, watching his recent fights, he has been able to knock out a bunch of dudes and get messy with a bunch of dudes who are just bad.
Yeah.
It's oh yeah, you beat a 38-year-old Johnny Cisneros. Boy, that knockout is sure
all the kids are talking about that one.
Andy Murad, who age unlisted and has actually won a bunch of fights after that, so I shouldn't make too much fun of him. But they're all Gladiator Challenge, so never mind.
I mean, he's still been put a little career together for himself at Bellator after they brought him in to lose to Michael Page.
I mean, he has, but like I say, the guys he's fought in Bellator, sure. Jesse Juarez, Johnny Cisneros, Andy Murad.
But how good is Salikhov really?
I think the big thing to me is that Salikhov is good enough for, you look at Rainey's fight against Mark Stevens and his fight with Chidi Njokuani, and he waits a lot. He will just sit on the outside and look for his opportunity to throw one or two perfect strikes. He'll feint to kind of pull the trigger and he'll pressure, but the amount of times he actually throws compared to how much time he spends setting up his shots is really low, or really high, I should say. A lot of time, not a lot of shots. And I think you give Salikhov that much time to set up his own offense, and his timing and his accuracy are really good. The big thing in the Alex Garcia fight especially just seemed to be that Garcia just came out and wrestled him. He was fuck this dude. I'm not standing here and waiting for you to throw your next spinning back kick. I'm going to put you on your ass. And Ricky Rainey's not going to do that.
Yeah.
He's going to stand out at range and look to set up his right hand or a snapping front kick.
I guess some of my confusion stems from my confusion about Alex Garcia and where I stand on him as a fighter. But he did approach him he approached Salikhov very intelligently. He came out wrestling. He also pressured him with his boxing, something that he's not. He's had trouble controlling himself on the outside, and he's had trouble winging bombs on the inside. We've never seen him push forward behind jabs and takedown setups, which was pretty good.
Yeah. I just don't see anything that Ricky Rainey's going to do to keep this fight being not a range striking battle, where I have a lot more faith in Muslim Salikhov's ability to be creative and unusual and throw things with speed and accuracy in ways that Rainey's not ready for than I do Rainey, the dude who took Gilbert Smith for 3 rounds in 2016.
Hey, don't knock Gilbert Smith until you fought him, Zane.
Or Mark Stevens, the guy who goes 3 rounds with Mark Stevens. And loses a decision to Chidi Njokuani. What do these things mean? That doesn't tell me Rainey's going to that, you know, it doesn't show me the dude who's knocking out Jesse Juarez. I'm not like, oh, now Ricky Rainey knockout threat now. It's, he doesn't pull the trigger often enough. So I'm not picking him to win this as a kickboxing battle. And if somebody does change it up to wrestle or grapple, it's more likely to be Salikhov, frankly.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Odds on this, Salikhov is the favorite, opened at -260, adjusted up to -169, currently out at -185. Rainey opened at +180, adjusted up and down to +150, is currently at +153. And that brings us to Tim Boetsch versus Antonio Carlos Jr. And I like this fight a lot, actually, because I think there's a reasonable chance that Antonio Carlos Jr. loses it. And the big reasons are Tim Boetsch. I mean, Tim Boetsch, any fight like this, it's just, do you knock the guy out or do you get submitted instantly? Like, those are your two choices. You have 3 rounds to knock him out or 1 round to get submitted. How are you going to play this, Tim?
Take your pick.
And I'm troubled with Antonio Carlos Jr. by one really specific thing. And that's that his favorite method of getting takedowns is from a high body lock. And Tim Boetsch, as bad as he is at defending takedowns, is mostly just really terrible at defending double legs.
Yeah. And
he stands tall with his feet together. He doesn't sprawl well. He doesn't get underhooks well. But if you get him in the clinch, he's a really hard clinch fighter to deal with.
He's real strong.
Yeah. Real strong, good dirty boxing, good upper body control in general. Like we saw even against Jacare in his fight against Jacare. Jacare like started out going for an upper body takedown and started out in the clinch trying to control Tim in the clinch and didn't do a very good job of it, and eventually got in on a double leg, and that's how he got Boetsch down. It was first he caught a kick and Boetsch scrambled up, and then later he got a double leg to get the takedown. And Ortalis Latis too. He, beat he landed a lot of the better shots in that fight. That was, his Talis Latis boxer performance. But he tried to clinch up a lot with Tim Boetsch, got nothing done, and eventually went to the double leg and got the takedown.
Got hurt a few times in the clinch.
Yeah, got hurt a few times in the clinch. So there's a very real chance that Antonio Carlos Jr. just marches forward on Tim Boetsch.
How good would it be?
I'm still picking Antonio Carlos Jr. I think he can get in on double legs. I think he would be really stupid not to in this fight. He's younger. He hits hard. His chin isn't bad. I mean, he did get knocked out by Dan Kelly, but...
I mean, with the mightiest kick ever thrown, in fairness, with the chip shop destroyer. Don't talk shit on that fucking kick, Zane. You want to take that monster to the face? Is that what you want? You want to take Dan Kelly's monster to your face, Zane? I don't think so, Buster.
I'm really reluctant. Basically, I'm picking Carlos Jr. based on relative age and youth, and the idea like this is supposed to be a fight you win.
Yeah,
like you have the setup to win it. Don't just walk in like an idiot and let Tim Boetsch throw snapping front kicks and then uppercuts.
Tim Boetsch, he throws exactly the kind of kicks that could knock Antonio Carlos Jr. out. That's my favorite thing, is that Boetsch's favorite kick is this goofy-ass little front kick, and that is what puts Shoeface down. I hope it happens again. Oh, should I go?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I love this fight. This is like what middleweight was made for.
It is.
Because like Antonio Carlos Jr. would probably be like a top contender already in any other division. It's just the fact that he happens to weigh somewhere in the neighborhood of 185 pounds. It renders him incapable of making good decisions. Every single other person who weighs around 185 is, I don't know, something about that weight. It just makes all the journeymen better and more dangerous on the night.
Hey, we got to stick together. Us 185ers. Although I'm not going with the weight cut, so I'd probably be a welterweight. But
yeah, I'm definitely around there too. But like you kind of summed up the matchup. It's like I will say it does feel like Carlos Jr. he can fight this one slow. I know you said like he's got one round to submit him, but I think in this, like, what he really just doesn't want to do is hang around inside with Tim Boetsch. That is where Boetsch is really dangerous, and hang around in the pocket with him. And we have seen Carlos Jr. use okay footwork. He stays light on his feet at least. He's slowly gotten better at working that jab and setting his distance when he is moving around on the outside. And like Boetsch is not good at that range. He's had a few performances where he has looked really sharp and surprisingly effective, but more often than not, he's pretty flat when he's outside of arm's reach. It's when he can grab onto you that he's really dangerous. And
what he does is he's learned to put out a high volume of kicks from range that make a lot of people panic into fighting him close.
Yeah, but a lot of them are like bullshit kicks.
Yeah, but it works. I mean,
sure. Far be it from me to say that Tim Boetsch's game doesn't make sense for Tim Boetsch.
Yeah.
But like Carlos Jr. has it in him to set up double legs from long range and not give Boetsch many opportunities at all to tie up. And I think he'll do that. I think.
Yeah.
But even if he fails on one double leg and gets into a clinch and it gets kind of messy, and then he kind of loses his cool and then just starts clinching with Boetsch because that is where he is most comfortable hitting his takedowns. Like I can see this falling apart for Shoeface at any moment. One takedown failure, Boetsch hits him with an uppercut inside, and suddenly he's fighting a completely different fight, or he's done because Boetsch is a very heavy hitter. So I love this matchup. I hate it at the same time. It's very confusing and weird. I hope Tim Boetsch wins, but I'm going to pick Carlos Jr.
Boetsch is coming in as the underdog. Probably a bigger underdog than he should be. He's opened at plus 220, adjusted up and down to plus 218. Is currently at plus 211. And Carlos Jr. opened at minus 260, adjusted up and down to minus 253, and has dropped back down a bit to minus 262.
Is that loss to Dan Kelly just going to be? Is that going to be Antonio Carlos Jr.'s Tito Ortiz, a la Ryan Bader? Like, what if he just gets way, way better than that, but we're all still ragging him about losing to Dan Kelly and how it means he eternally sucks and can't make good decisions?
I mean, that's the beauty of the fight game. You get stuck with something like that, you know?
That's it. That's the beauty.
that's the glory right there. Antonio Carlos Jr. will always be Dan Kelly's whipping boy. Yeah. Always.
Come for the fight, stay for the albatrosses around every fighter's neck. Love it.
All right. Brings us to a women's strawweight bout. Michelle Waterson, Cortney Casey. And I've now lost my place.
I believe it is me.
You. Go ahead, yeah.
I like this fight. It's going to be weird looking, because it's going to be like the smallest woman on the UFC women's strawweight roster against probably the biggest women's strawweight they have in Cortney Casey. That alone is having me lean heavily towards Cortney Casey because Michelle Waterson is just so tiny. But the thing is like I don't really trust Cortney Casey to fight a smart fight, and never have.
No.
And every time that I do think she's turning a corner, she gives me a reason to be like, oh, you're still Cortney Casey. In that fight with Felice Herrig, like, I don't know what she was doing. You know what I mean? It was a close fight. It was fairly close. I thought Herrig definitely won it. But Casey, like, didn't adjust at all. She didn't do anything differently through the entire fight. She stopped moving about 2 minutes into the bout and just planted her feet and tried to catch Herrig coming in over and over and over and over again, which would be fine if you're playing like a video game and you have limitless time to lose until you can figure out the level. Doesn't work so great when you only have 3 rounds of time to work and you need to make something happen to prevent yourself from losing the fight. Gosh, this matchup. So, you know, like we have power on the side of Cortney Casey, more so than Waterson. We also have Casey, despite all that, is definitely, I think, more comfortable like slinging punches in the pocket. Waterson is really like a one-punch pot shotter from long range, one kick, one shot at a time. And maybe that's just because she doesn't have the size to trade punches with most women in this division.
I think honestly her karate style modification, she gets thrown way off balance and way off of sight line when she's punching in combination. Like what we saw against Rose Namajunas was like she would end up turned sideways, like facing this way with Rose Namajunas over here, and just get like fucking clocked. It's just like, you know, the way she's built her style is really like striking that looks flashy against people who cannot strike at all.
Yeah. I think you're right. And you know, like there is the fact that Waterson, this feels very weird to say. Waterson's the better takedown artist of the two.
Yes.
A lot more consistent with those takedowns and can I will say this too. Waterson can maintain a pace really well. On the ground, she could scramble for hours and hours on end. But you know, like those takedowns, she might get them against Cortney Casey, but those takedowns,
a terrible wrestler.
Yeah. But they're also like head arm throws where like if you just make one mistake and you have the bigger fighter suddenly on your back, like can Michelle Waterson get out of that position? Can she, you know, so it feels weird to just basically pick a fight based on the fact that Waterson is like small, which is what it kind of feels like. But in a lot of areas of this fight, Cortney Casey's size and power and strength do feel like they'll be a significant factor. But if Casey is just so aimless in the fight and doesn't like dictate the bout, Waterson could also pick her apart sort of how Herrig did. If she just allows her to have an in and out striking battle, Waterson can be tricky. Thing is I don't think Waterson will keep that kind of fight.
No.
Waterson's going to get impatient and tie up and try
she is never one to control a single pace range of a fight.
So yeah, Casey's size and power feel like the deciding factor to me.
Yeah, I think the biggest way that Waterson could win it to me is honestly that she is an exceptionally gifted back take artist, and is really dangerous with individual submissions and grappling techniques in specific situations. And Casey having terrible takedown defense means that you could see like a Waterson versus Paige Vanzant kind of thing, where Waterson just kind of storms the gates and jumps on her for a sub and chokes her out, you know?
Yeah.
The thing that still has me picking Casey is that Casey, while having a really terrible wrestling game, and I didn't really realize that she was training a lot with Mackenzie Dern, but knowing that now, it all kind of makes a lot more sense.
Sure. No wrestling game? Pretty
good not the wrestling, but the next part, which is that Cortney Casey actually does have a good aggressive grappling game.
Yeah.
And we've seen her use it as a safety valve in multiple fights now. Like Herrig got her down immediately in their fight, only for Casey to sweep her.
Yeah. Herrig quickly decided that she didn't want to wrestle her anymore.
Yeah.
Like I think Herrig came into that fight expecting to use her ground game and use her wrestling more, and Casey immediately put her in a bad spot.
And Jessica Aguilar got her down over and over, only to find out that she couldn't get past Casey's guard or get past her aggressive game off her back and do it in a way that she was comfortable with. And she lost that fight.
Plus, there was the nice counter to the head arm throw against Ronda Marcos, where she took the back after getting thrown down to the ground.
Yep. And you know, the obviously the other part of that being Claudia Gadelha, you can't really be a bad wrestler against Claudia Gadelha.
No.
But I think if she can fight Waterson off, what we've also seen of Waterson is not only does she have a great back take game and is she really specifically good at different submission setups, but her whole grappling game in general is very aggressive and it's very built around attack. So she's not a great defensive grappler.
Yeah.
And that means that if Casey can be a good defensive grappler, which she seems to be, then she can probably stay safe enough to force this fight back into the places where she wants it. And then she's just a much more punishing, comfortable pocket striker with more power. And if Waterson is going to step forward with like long punch, leg kick combo, get my head offline and be right in the pocket, then, people like Tisha Torres and Rose Namajunas lit her up for that. And Casey may be less adept than them, but she could probably still have that success. So, yeah, I got to pick Cortney Casey too. I think Waterson's game is just it's built for kind of a different era. It's built for a less competitive era of women fighting at 105 and 115. The current metagame for those divisions, which is kind of those divisions, especially 115, are evolving really rapidly, and I think
her game still feels like it's something out of bantamweight, or it's
something where if your opponent can't strike very well, then they can't make you pay for getting off balance and for getting your feet out of position. Then you can throw all these weird, crafty technical strikes that they don't see coming as single shots. And then your aggressive grappling game to counter that and your head and arm throw game, they all kind of work together for just somebody who's not really technically prepared but is tough and is willing to go after it with you.
Her game is also an archetypal Mike Winkeljohn game, we should say. So we've discussed the problems inherent to that many times, I'm sure.
Yeah. Odds on that fight: Waterson is the underdog, opening at -120, adjusting up to plus 101 rather, and currently at plus 100. Casey opening at -120, adjusting up and down to -122, and currently at -125. I think Casey could be a little bit bigger favorite. Honestly, I think Waterson kind of has a Hail Mary sub chance. Otherwise, she has something to prove in terms of winning a point fight against bigger, stronger competition in the UFC. I mean, her only other UFC win than Paige Vanzant is submitting Angela Magana, which took her 3 rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I understand it because I don't really trust Cortney Casey either. But
no, but I think Casey's kind of like a incredibly consistent kind of fighter to a fault, and that's been evolving into a much sharper striker, a much sharper pocket striker who throws a lot of combinations with power, and a better defensive grappler and aggressive grappler, just all around grappler. And she's still just a terrible wrestler who's got off with that, and that'll probably stop her from being a really elite talent, especially also wanting to be a pocket brawler as the tallest fighter in your division.
Yeah. Although, she can get those uppercuts to work.
Yeah.
It's not a terrible idea. She does have power for this weight.
Yep. Brings us to Israel Adesanya versus Marvin Vettori. And, I came into this fully expecting to pick Vettori. I felt like I was thinking, I don't love what I saw out of Adesanya's open space. For the fuck's sake, Molly. I don't love what I saw out of Adesanya's open space takedown defense against a much less athletic fighter in Rob Wilkinson.
Yeah.
He just, he tried to, roll through it and do all sorts of, funky athletic stuff that better fighters are just going to stick to him for and chain wrestle through and make him pay for really badly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started watching more Marvin Vettori fights, especially his UFC bouts. Maybe not, I don't know. I'm less interested in what he was doing regionally because it's just not important. What he was doing 2 or 3 years ago before he was at King's MMA is just not that big a deal. But looking at the fighter he's been since he's moved to King's and in the UFC, he doesn't really wrestle voluntarily at all. Like, if he doesn't have to, he's not going to. And, we saw that against Omari Akhmedov. He just had a slow-paced kickboxing bout that he lost a lot of before turning it around in later rounds. And more, but, now you could be like, oh, well, Akhmedov's a pretty good wrestler and all that. And he came in with a stated game plan of, I want to stop takedowns and box with this guy, kickbox with this guy, force him to stand with me. But then you go to the Vitor Miranda fight, and the only way he got Miranda down was really like catching a kick and then following through on it, and Miranda falling to the ground and him chasing him. There wasn't a lot of just like, oh, I'm going to shoot in on you in any kind of space and take you down. It's not a game he employed. The Antonio Carlos Jr. fight, Antonio Carlos Jr. just spent the whole fight sticking him against the cage, basically. And he fought off takedowns, but Israel Adesanya is not going to take him down.
You never know, Zane. The style bender could do anything at any moment.
Yeah, except wrestle. It's all styles but wrestling. And, then Alberto Uda, he submitted him, and he's willing to take the back and, sink in chokes. And, if he can get on top of somebody, he can be a reasonably dangerous fighter doing that. That's how he got all of his stoppages in regionally, was submissions. But that's not what we've seen from him in the UFC. What we've seen from him in the UFC and under Kings is a guy who wants to be a kickboxer. And if he wants to just go out and have a kickboxing fight with Israel Adesanya, I'm not picking him to win that fight.
Yeah, nor would I. If that's the fight, I have to assume he will try to wrestle Israel Adesanya. Maybe not.
You watch the Vitor Miranda fight. I'm not saying that Vitor Miranda is better than Israel Adesanya.
Well, that's kind of the point. Is can you afford to not take Vitor Miranda down? Probably yes. Can you afford to not take Israel Adesanya down? The chances are much, much lower.
Yeah, but I think, to me, it suggests a fighter who doesn't game plan. I look at you if you're approaching Omari Akhmedov and Vitor Miranda and Antonio Carlos Jr. all the same way, that to me suggests a fighter who isn't game planning at all.
I don't know. It suggests, I think we're still at the point where I could, if he comes out in his next fight, in this one, and looks like a total wrestler and everything, I would 100% believe that he spent the last 3 fights learning to be a kickboxer. Because up to that point in his career, he wasn't a great striker.
Oh, sure.
Went to King's MMA, became a King's fighter. Now he's this aggressive southpaw combination kickboxer. I'm not 100% sure that that's the entirety of his style yet. If he comes into this fight and just tries to do that, I will 100% be on your side. That'll be the turning point where I'll be like, okay, something's gone wrong with Marvin Vettori. He forgot that he's actually a pretty strong wrestler with a good submission game.
Well, I don't even know that he's a strong wrestler. That's kind of the other thing. He's got a good submission game and some good positional submissions, but does out wrestling dudes on the Italian MMA circuit make you a good wrestler?
Fair enough.
Like I say, I don't, you look at his fights in the UFC and he's just not, the ways he's getting takedowns, or when he got Miranda down, the way Miranda got back up, he just kind of moved around over him in a way that just let Miranda stand back up. Yeah, there wasn't any real consistent positional pressure there that suggested he was going to I've got this dude locked down now. There's nothing he can do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's definitely willing to let the scramble happen. That could be a chance for Adesanya, but I assume Vettori will wrestle. I assume he will have some success if he does it.
Sure.
Adesanya is not a good wrestler. He's just not. And but I also think that's compounded by the fact that Adesanya doesn't seem to realize yet that he can lose a fight by being out wrestled or by being held against the cage. He he gave Rob Wilkinson, maybe he was 100% confident that at any moment he could knock Rob Wilkinson out. And maybe that's why I felt that way. Who knows? But he gave Rob Wilkinson a lot of clock to just hold him in place and just chill. And like that's both a good thing and a bad thing for a guy like Adesanya, because against a lower level of opposition, what he's been facing for his whole career up to this point, as a mixed martial artist, that is, his opponents are the ones freaking out because they have to take him down. Like they are the one who is holding him against the cage is frequently the one who's using a lot more energy because he's like, oh, I cannot let this guy go. I need to hold him here because if I'm at range, he's going to kill me. And so like Adesanya being the chill one in those circumstances works really well.
Yeah.
But when you start getting to the point where people are like, hey, I have won a dozen fights by controlling people and holding them down, or I've done this at least a few times against resisting opponents. I know how it works. Or I've had it done to me a few times. Those guys are not going to be freaking out while holding you in place. While you're resting, they're going to be resting too.
Yeah.
And you're going to be losing because you're the one getting held in place. And I just don't know yet. Like, I think Adesanya needs a lesson learned kind of fight.
He absolutely does. And this could easily be it. Like my feeling is only just, I'm going back and I'm watching the fighter that I see Marvin Vettori being in the cage. And I'm saying, this dude doesn't look like he's interested in, this dude doesn't look like he's interested in his opponents. He looks like he's developing a King's MMA game that is very much just a pressure kickboxing part.
I agree with that. Yeah, however you frame it, it does look like he's interested in like developing his game, becoming a certain kind of fighter, rather than the other way around. But I will say, like, if he comes in here and doesn't try to wrestle Israel Adesanya, Rafael Cordeiro should be embarrassed. Because there is no reason you should allow a fighter with Marvin Vettori's talent to lose a fight like this that would potentially, like, this would be a big name win. Is Adesanya, he's at a perfect point in his career where you get a win over him now. You know, I mean, you were the guy who exposed him, but he's not dangerous enough yet where, like, he's going to be really hard to expose. So, I don't know. To me, this is, we had Wonderboy Thompson versus Matt Brown. This is that fight for Israel Adesanya. Matt Brown, also not a wrestler. He's an MMA fighter, though, and he wrestled the shit out of Stephen Thompson. Vettori has to be coming into this fight thinking, this dude can't wrestle. What am I going to do? Not take him down? So, I don't know. I assume that's going to be the case. And if so, I think Vettori has a very good shot in this fight. He's aggressive. He can maintain a pace for 3 rounds, a fast pace, and stay fresh, stay sharp. And he can mix up his skills, and I assume he'll do it.
All right. And part of me just really wants Adesanya to win.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think he needs to, if he loses here, I think we'll see a better Adesanya next time.
Yeah, we might. I just don't want to watch him win. I just want to, I want to watch him win. I don't necessarily, but long term, you might be right. I just want to watch him win this fight.
This is, you're going to KFC because you don't want to turn on the oven and wait for an hour and a half. I want the chicken now. Okay. I know I can make it. I know it would be better in the long run, but I want the chicken now.
Yes.
Adesanya, crispy or grilled?
I don't know. I'm willing to go out and pick Adesanya just off the idea that I'm not seeing Marvin Vettori the wrestler.
Yeah. If you're right, if that's how he approaches this fight, it's a bad, he might still win it.
Yeah.
Just with like pressure if he can take shots, but really like Adesanya is a very good kickboxer.
Yeah.
So you don't want to play that game.
Willing to be totally wrong on this.
I hope you're right too. It's fun when Adesanya wins.
Yeah. Adesanya is a favorite, mostly because people like me are marks. Open at -260, adjusted up and down to about -232, and has slowly drifted back. So he went up to 232, has slowly drifted back down to -267. And Vettori opened at +180, adjusted up and down to +199, is currently still moving up to +215. So,
placing my bet really quick. I really don't understand why that's happening. It's just the popularity of Adesanya.
Yeah, I think it's just how, the hype.
Like, surely even you picking Adesanya can see, like, this is a matchup where.
Yeah, I know that he doesn't do any of the right things to prevent wrestling. I just don't see the right wrestling game in Vettori. Like, partially too, I think Adesanya is okay at stuffing takedowns against the cage, and he relies heavily on that. And Vettori, any wrestling game he has, seems very much like, let me get you up against the cage and then try to like trip and drag you down. So I think
we've seen that chill Adesanya cage wrestling defense out of more accomplished, better fighters. Like Shane Burgos does that. Yeah. I'm not questioning Shane Burgos. So maybe there's more.
Or, we've seen guys like Randy Brown who you give him an open space takedown and he can't stuff it to save his goddamn life. Mm-hmm. And then you give him against the cage and he will stop shots all day.
Yeah. No doubt.
So I have this feeling that nothing about Vettori's wrestling game or how he wants to approach his game matches up well with Adesanya. Mm. But there's no reason to think he can't just go out there and take the man down and beat him up and get his back and choke him out.
If you were his coach, no matter what his style was, you'd be like, take this fucking dude down.
Yeah. Shoot in space. Go out, throw an overhand at him, get in on his hips.
Run at his legs. Just tackle him on the shin. Okay? Yeah. Just run at his legs until he falls over. It'll probably work.
Yeah. That brings us to the welterweight bout. Carlos Condit, Alex Oliveira.
This fight makes me far sadder than it does excited. And it's not because I think like, I don't know. I like Carlos Condit. It's the worst kind of sadness. It's not like, oh, he's going to get starched by Alex Oliveira. I don't know if that's going to happen. It's more that he's just not going to look like Carlos Condit. That's the fear, is that he's just going to look like a different guy who's not as interesting, like a guy who doesn't deserve the nickname Natural Born Killer. And it's a shame because Carlos Condit
born Maimer now.
yeah, maybe. Carlos Condit looked really flat in his last fight with Neil Magny. I don't know, he did have the appearance of someone who came in with a game plan, much akin to the game plan he had against Nick Diaz. And I think it's fair to say that style of fighting has been creeping more and more into Carlos Condit's game since that Nick Diaz fight. We've seen more like back foot fighting and stylistic flexibility out of Condit. Against Magny, he made the questionable choice of really just trying to counter-strike. And I don't know why.
Something that Carlos Condit has been very good at.
No. And his, like, he almost made it work. He's so experienced. He has this horribly ugly style of defense, but he almost made it work because he at least is used to seeing shots coming at him. He was able to react and get his head out of the way, but the way he moves, like, he's never in position to deliver a hard counter when he's fighting that way. If Condit's going to beat you with a counter strike, which he has throughout his career, landed many, many devastating counter strikes, it's going to be a same time counter where he's like stepping into you at the same time you're throwing. It's not going to be making you miss and then coming back with a slick, perfect shot. It's going to be, we both smashed into each other and I smashed you harder. That's how he knocked out Thiago Alves. It's how he knocked out Dan Hardy. Happens a lot. But the fact that Condit didn't try that against Neil Magny sort of suggests that he doesn't feel he can do that anymore. Like that there is a chin issue, that he has to be more defensive. He has to find a style that's going to work for him now as an older fighter. And he's been putting in a little time learning to fight this way, so now he's really going to invest in it. But it didn't look good, and it didn't work, and it was like Carlos Condit, for the first time, looking totally aimless in a fight and not really having a clear goal he was pushing towards, or, you know, it just wasn't the violence ramping up each round, which even when he's losing is something you kind of expect out of a Carlos Condit fight. And, you know, like, I talked a lot about this, but there was his fight with Damian Maia, and he talked about being rocked by like a short shot from Maia on the ground. We saw him get rattled by Robbie Lawler. He's taken more punishment than probably almost any other fighter on the roster over the course of his career. And it's got to come, you know, that price tag has to be cashed at some point. And I think, yeah, Alex Oliveira is just like still extremely athletic. You know, he's still relatively close to he's still in his prime. He's like, what, 29?
He's 30 now, but he's only been fighting for I mean, he's like 7 years into his career, 30. He's basically right in the prime of his career. Yeah.
Yep. And still looks like it, still strong, still can make a style adjustment from one fight to the next effectively. Light on his feet, quick, explosive. I don't know. It's like if Carlos Condit's going to give Alex Oliveira that kind of long-range striking battle that he gave Neil Magny, Oliveira may not have Magny's reach, but he can cover distance and hit a lot harder than Neil Magny can, and is quite comfortable in that kind of fight. We've seen some of his more spectacular moments come out of these long-range pot-shotting kind of battles. So, yeah, I just think this is going to be the new Carlos Condit, and it's not that fun to watch, and he's going to lose. So I'm going with Cowboy.
I mean, the sadness for me, really honestly, just comes from watching tape on Alex Oliveira and being like, wow, like 5 years ago, Carlos Condit beats you every single day. Right now, in your prime, best Alex Oliveira still should not beat Carlos Condit. You know, it's just he's wild. His striking is still unstructured, even when he can kind of make different adjustments and plans, fight to fight and things like that, and change how he wants to approach the fight. He still just kind of throws shots from his like shoulder socket.
Yeah.
And reaches out with his chin and his feet, and his chin over his feet and all that. And there's a lot of stuff not to like and a lot of lack of continuity that has me worried about how Alex Oliveira can consistently take Carlos Condit even if Carlos Condit is just durable and can fight round to round. I don't know necessarily how Alex Oliveira would do just as a slowly, technically messy fighter technically messier fighter every round. But the sort of ace up Oliveira's sleeve is that he's a very strong wrestler, and that Carlos Condit's always been a really weak wrestler. And that Condit has never really had a consistent takedown stuffing game, and Neil Magny got him down. He did okay shutting down some shots from Neil Magny and stuff, and he's always fights well off his back. But if Condit is just a gear slower now than he used to be, and is going to have like a reasonably kind of even scrappy fight with Oliveira, where he might be more likely to get hurt badly from a shot, then Oliveira's ability to take him down as well and maybe control parts of the fight on the ground or control parts of the fight in the clinch, things like that, make me a lot more likely to just pick Oliveira here. Otherwise, I don't like it. I don't feel like Oliveira's technical ability anywhere suggests that he should just be able to run Condit over. But the combination of just age, durability, athleticism, and Condit's adjustments around that, and Oliveira's wrestling to go with it, make me feel like Oliveira can control enough of the fight to take a decision if Condit can't hurt him badly enough to finish him. All right, on that note, odds for the fight. Condit is the underdog, opening at +120, adjusting up and down to +172, currently at +164. Oliveira, the favorite, opening at -160, adjusting up and down to -192, currently at -201. I think that's a little wide, honestly. I mean, I know Oliveira's fresher and more athletic and in his prime and all that, but he's still so wild and unstructured. Like if Oliveira can't hurt Condit, I still expect Condit to be the much more consistent fighter over 3 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's never to like a peak Carlos Condit violence. Like,
what if Oliveira comes out and just out wrestles Carlos Condit?
Yeah, that's why I'm picking Oliveira, actually.
Yeah, but like
it's because that if it's going to be like a reasonably even back and forth fight where Oliveira might be a little more durable, his ability to then also control parts of the fight with wrestling make me feel like he takes a decision.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I understand it. I'm still having trouble just accepting the idea that like Carlos Condit should have been a sizable underdog against Neil Magny based on that performance. And where does Alex Oliveira fit in the hierarchy? Who's beneath Carlos Condit at this point in his career? I don't know.
Oh, I still think a lot of welterweights are. It's just not most of the good ones.
I'm not implying that literally every welterweight can beat Carlos Condit. It's just I'm just sad. The idea of it's a sad fall from Reis.
It's not Joe Lozon, Chris Gritzmacher sad.
Yeah, well, hopefully if a similar situation happens, this is the real problem. Joe Lozon's corner saved his life. Fucking Mike Winklejohn's going to be in Carlos Condit's corner. He's dead. Okay, he's going to die in the cage because Winklejohn has no mercy.
Well, Carlos Condit at least still hasn't been knocked out. So
yeah.
We're still waiting on that level of deterioration to come.
Feels like it's coming now.
It does. That brings us to a lightweight bout. Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and I love this fight. I love it a lot. I love it the more I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love it because I think Justin Gaethje is going to win it.
Mm.
Because I think if Dustin Poirier wins it, it's because Dustin Poirier comes out and he drops a fucking hammer on Justin Gaethje out of the gate and knocks him out.
Yeah.
And puts him away. Or he is able to take Gaethje down and just sort of out-wrestle him and grapple him and just stay tough on him for round after round. And I don't think that's likely, but that is the other thing Dustin Poirier has been doing lately.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make me that excited. Gaethje is hard to take down. He's really hard to keep down, so I'm not that worried about that. The big thing, there's a couple of things here. First off, as sort of a meta-analysis thing, Gaethje handles pressure and adversity much better than Dustin Poirier. Poirier is still a guy who basically anytime a fight gets exciting, Dustin Poirier is worse for it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he's hurt you and is thus opening up more and swinging from the hip and putting his chin up in the air and paying no attention to his defense, or whether you hurt him and he suddenly becomes incredibly unresponsive technically to the things that he should be paying attention to and normally does.
Mm-hmm.
Like you go back and watch that Eddie Alvarez fight and you can see like an entire encapsulation of Dustin Poirier getting worse as things go better, or like get more exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And like, when it's just a calm, even fight and they're trading shots.
It's all Poirier.
Poirier looks great. He flashes a nice jab. He feints a lot. He's picked up this style where he leans back nicely away from things with his chin tucked and then comes back with really short little sharp counters of power shots that he doesn't put a lot on, but he's got heavy-handed enough and tight enough with his skills that they can really crack and, hurt a guy. And he did that on Eddie Alvarez and was just wrecking Eddie Alvarez's world with it. And then he hurts Eddie Alvarez. And suddenly he's just swinging from the hip, classic Dustin Poirier, go kill or be killed style. And, following up, Eddie Alvarez battling back, hurts Dustin Poirier. And he hurts him, but it doesn't seem like he hurt him like nearly as bad as Poirier hurt Alvarez.
Mm-hmm.
And then Alvarez went for a shot on Poirier, and Poirier just kind of fell over. Like, that's when Poirier gets hurt and when something goes wrong for him, he's had a tendency where it just kind of seems like he just kind of crumbles and where like things just start kind of cascading wrong.
Yeah. He just becomes like exceptionally, not right away, but just more and more vulnerable.
Yeah.
The wilder the fight gets. It's funny, like the piece there, it ran on Bloody Elbow's front page yesterday, maybe today, but Poirier was talking about how Justin Gaethje's style is, quote, unsustainable.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny that Poirier is now trash talking Gaethje by saying to him all the things his own coaches have been saying to him. Like, that's clearly what they've been telling Dustin Poirier about his style. And he's like, now, Justin, your style is unsustainable. It's like, that's the only reason you don't constantly brawl. is because ATT told you this shit is not sustainable.
Yeah, and he knows it, and he's talked about it, and he's tried to like get away from it for years now. Like it's a
now he's going to try and set himself apart from Gaethje by being the sustainable guy against the maniac. Maybe he's going to fight a really boring fight.
And the thing is that it's Justin Gaethje is just all triggers.
Yeah,
you know, like he's all opponent triggers. If you have any like trigger warnings, Justin Gaethje will find them and set them off. You know, it's just all like
racist. He's bigoted.
No. not. I mean, technically.
Okay.
He's the technical. He's the technical hard right wing fighter. Hardcore, like way off the right wing. You know, as a technical.
I prefer hard right hook to hard right wing, if I'm honest.
Because it's like he's just kind of offensive as a fighter, and I don't mean that like he is offensive purely, but
you're really like having a hard time not painting Justin Gaethje as some kind of just unlikable person.
No, but I mean, like he's a very likable person. He's an immensely likable person. Like you see the shit like with Rose Namajunas winning, he's all like crying and blubbering in his car. It's like he seems like a wonderful person. He's a social worker, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
But his style, it's just like it's the kind of thing that I think fighters face it and they're just like, no, I'm really mad about this now. Like I hurt you and you didn't go away and you just kept throwing shots at me and what the fuck? Or you hurt me and it was just off some weird clubbing swing punch that I'm not supposed to be hurt by. And he's just there to make his opponents as angry as possible. Because when they're getting angry, he's doing totally fine.
There's a big difference between the I like this focusing on triggers and how, because it is like fighting a machine when you fight Justin Gaethje. It's just like the only way to beat this game is to keep hitting this button. But every time I touch the button, the machine punches me in the face, or kicks me in the leg. So it's like you just keep setting off those triggers. It's like fighting somebody who is inhuman, who doesn't respond with like fear and trepidation the way a normal person does. And there's a very real difference between that and Dustin. Like both guys are very instinctive in how they brawl, but Gaethje's instinctive brawling does feel more sustainable than Dustin Poirier's. Because Dustin Poirier's, it's like he loses his cool, but like brawling is when Justin Gaethje is cool. You know what I mean? Like that is his whole thing. He likes to do it. He enjoys it. Dustin Poirier often feels like he's brawling because he has no choice but to brawl. He feels compelled.
And we know actively that he hates it. We know actively that in his brain he's like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm not supposed to be doing this.
He feels compelled and starts to freak out a bit. Justin Gaethje does not feel any compulsion. It's just what he wants to do.
Yeah, my worries for Gaethje in this fight are his ability to make his leg kick game as effective against southpaws. He still throws. We saw against Michael Johnson as a southpaw, he still threw a lot to Johnson's. He just used his lead leg to throw leg kicks to Johnson's lead leg, and threw some to the inside as well. But it's not. I don't know if it's the same kind of violence that he brings from his own rear leg when he's facing a right-handed fighter.
It's all about that right low kick.
Yeah. So without that, I don't know that he can be as distracting a striker, because a lot of how he strikes and how he's functional is going forward and being distracting. Like I am throwing big clubbing punches at you so you don't notice this hard as fuck leg kick coming in, or I'm throwing hard as fuck leg kicks at you so you stop blocking the big clubbing punches I'm winging at your head. Of course, the other part too is I think Dustin Poirier, I get the feeling he watches a fair bit of tape. He's a pretty I get the feeling he's a studious fighter, reasonably. And he has to have seen that Gaethje's entire leg kick game and counter game went away when Eddie Alvarez started tuning him up to the body. And that if you can just beat the shit out of his body, because he does the high guard. He defaults to a high guard, and then he looks to counter strike off of that with big winging hooks. And if you can hit him to the body, then you're making, you can make him pay a lot for that high guard.
He fights super upright too. The body's always a target because he's very square and he's very tall.
Yep. So Poirier's never looked nearly like any kind of consistent body puncher in his whole career. So that would have to be something he really pulls out that's new to this fight. But it's there. And I'm still picking Gaethje because I just expect it to. I think Poirier's gonna have a great first round. I think he's gonna come out and he's gonna look slick. He's gonna look sharp. He's gonna hit Gaethje and he's gonna hurt him. It's gonna be like the Eddie Alvarez fight, where he's like, I got this motherfucker hurt now. I'm going after him, and then Gaethje will start battling back, start clubbing him off of, with Poirier coming in. He'll find leg kicks to start cutting away Poirier's focus on his hands. And if Poirier starts getting hurt, I have a lot less faith in him being able to battle back against Gaethje than I have Gaethje being able to battle back against Poirier.
Half the time Gaethje gets rocked, you as a fan, you don't even feel any tension.
Yeah.
Give it 30 seconds. He'll be Justin Gaethje again after that time. And that is not the case for Poirier. Yeah, I think you pretty much laid it all out. Poirier's got really good skills from long range, very underrated there. Yeah. He is too, when it does if he's in control, when it gets messy inside, his footwork is underrated as well. Gaethje tends to fire these big single shot counters. If Poirier can work combinations and do this little shifting movement he likes to do, move from side to side, he could win a pocket battle with Justin Gaethje on technique alone. The thing is you got to put Gaethje out with that one shot. You gotta hurt him so badly you win the fight in that moment, because if you don't, he's still going to be Justin Gaethje. And at some point when he catches you, which, as you said, happens more often after Poirier has hurt his opponent, that's when Poirier is going to fall apart. That's when that's Gaethje's world, is getting hurt, hurting the other guy. It's a horrible, messy, ugly back and forth fight. It's fine for him.
Yeah, even in Poirier's pretty dominant performance against Anthony Pettis, he walked into some huge shots from Pettis, not just a big uppercut at the end of the first round, but a couple other hard counters right on the jaw, because he was hurting Pettis a couple of times, and he just starts opening up again. Yep.
Yeah, he just can't resist, and that's why I just think it's so funny. Not that he's being a hypocrite, but that he is trying to correct his own behavior by pointing out how wrong it is when Justin Gaethje does.
Yeah. He is repeating the mantras that have been drilled into him for years.
Everybody's philosophy on the world around him is just projection when you come right down to it. And it's definitely the case here. Dustin Poirier is this is how the world works. And I know I've been wrong in the past, but I'm saved now. I'm correct now. So this is how the world works. And I think it's going to be a rude awakening when essentially saved Dustin Poirier goes in there to battle the Satan that is brawling, and the Dark Lord of Brawling just out brawls him. I just don't think he can avoid that kind of fight with Justin Gaethje. And, I don't think he has any way around it, because he can strike at long range, but his other option, the thing that has made Poirier very effective in recent fights, has been his great well-roundedness and combined with pressure. At lightweight, he has really filled the role of Rafael dos Anjos stylistically, where he comes forward, this southpaw banger, puts the pressure on you, forces you into the cage, and then takes you down and mauls you on the ground and while you try to stand up. But he's not going to be able to take Justin Gaethje down. He might get him down, but he's not going to be able to hold him down.
Yeah.
And entering into the clinch, yes, Poirier is effective there, but so is Gaethje.
Yeah.
So it's no matter where he goes, he's going to be on even footing with Gaethje. And at the moment Dustin Poirier feels he's on even footing with his opponent, he starts to fall apart a bit. So yeah, Justin Gaethje, man. He's the king of brawlers. And as long as he doesn't get knocked out, as long as his chin is still there, he's going to win this one.
Because there's, Poirier has stopped plenty of people in the first round. There's always that chance. And Gaethje's wide open to be hit. If Poirier lands the right shot, there's no guarantees that he can't knock Justin Gaethje out. But it is a knock him out or lose the war. That's how it feels.
Yeah. And I definitely do not see him, even if he's studied it on tape, I don't see him having the wherewithal to get low, rattle off 4 or 5 body shots, pivot out, get away from the response. Like,
yeah, most fighters can't change their games that deeply in any one fight. I mean, even we were talking about Kyle Bochniak had a really amazing performance of like fighting a totally different stylistic stand-up battle against Zabit Magomedov than he did Brandon Davis.
Yep.
It was still all head-hunting right hands.
Yeah.
It was just he moved forward in the Zabit fight and backward in the Davis fight, which is impressive. But that's not blowing your whole world apart, you know?
Right. Yeah. The whole mechanic, the mechanics the whole game was based on didn't really actually change. And like who the hell else besides Eddie Alvarez? I'm not saying that nobody else can beat Justin Gaethje, but who the hell else besides Eddie is going to stand in front of Justin Gaethje, who is marching them down, and throw 4 or 5 shots to the body like that without fear of reprisal? Like, most people just don't even, most people don't have the skill. The vast majority don't even have the balls to do it. So we'll see.
Dustin Poirier is the favorite in this fight. Most likely coming off, with Gaethje coming off that knockout loss and Poirier coming off a couple of wins. Opening at -130, adjusting up and down, and now totally flat at -141. And Gaethje opening at -110, adjusting up and down to +110, and currently at +115. So, I like Gaethje in this fight. You know, I gotta.
It feels like he should be the favorite. Like, you know.
It does. Poirier. I mean, Poirier has had the more consistent elite lightweight performances lately, but it definitely feels like Poirier is capable of losing more of the type of fights that Justin Gaethje is capable of offering than Gaethje is capable of losing the type of fights that Dustin Poirier offers.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, well, you know, like both these guys, I guess Gaethje lost to Eddie Alvarez, and Poirier, the fight didn't go long enough to give him a chance to lose to Eddie Alvarez, although it did seem like it might have been going that way.
It looked like it was going that way, and then he lost to Michael Johnson, and we saw him lose a while ago to Conor McGregor. But I
already did this on Heavy Hands this week, but like, to use very simple MMA math, it did, which this may not explain anything for you, but Michael Johnson literally hit these two dudes with the same exact knockout punch, and it knocked Dustin Poirier out, and it didn't knock Justin Gaethje out. So I don't know. That says something to me.
All right. We've taken a whole bunch of analysis and devolved it into some basic like
MMA math,
barn door, like written on a bathroom wall, like analysis bullshit. But whatever. You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSime. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush. That's BUSCH. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com. Give us a like on YouTube. That's a thumbs up thing down there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. That's where you get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, news, analysis, all that stuff we do week in, week out on video. We will be back next week for UFC Atlantic City, Barboza versus Lee, which I'm fucking excited for that card. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm not excited for the card so much as I'm excited for the top 2 fights, and then the rest of the card is there.
It is definitely there.
I don't know. I'm excited and I'm not, and I'm battling that. I let my enthusiasm carry me. We'll talk more about it in the future. But
it's okay. It's got some good stuff on it.
It has some good stuff on it, but whatever.
It's got some shit too. We'll talk about that next week.
I'm excited for Barboza versus Lee, and I'm curious about Edgar versus Swanson. Highly curious about that as a rematch, because I don't love it as a rematch. I don't think it's necessary, but I'm still interested to see where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I still want to see it. I just didn't need to see it. It's like, well, if you're gonna give it to me, I want to watch it. Sure.
It's like, well, another Alien versus Predator movie. I guess I'll go to the theater.
Yeah, fucking twist my fucking arm, man. Anyway, we'll be back with Care Don't Care, If I Did It, Heavy Hands, 6th Round, all that good stuff. So stay tuned, everyone. Thanks for watching.